How you doing? It's Russell and Hunter's the Bromance. Mike is the one off today. That's very strange setting, as I am here solo with Mike taking a much needed, much deserved day off. So what's happening with you? So I have a confession to make right off the bat, because today what I want to talk a little bit about is pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Because I just did that this weekend and I absolutely loved it. And it was somewhat unexpected because this was something I was resisting for a very long time, going to a country music festival in Indio, California, called Stagecoach. So I'll give you a little background on this, and I'll tell you why we're talking about this too, is because it all ties into where I'm at as an individual, as I grow, as I get less concerned with things that I cannot control, less attached to the outcome of things that I cannot control. And one of the main reasons why I no longer host the radio show on KFY is because of that. Is because I was spending a lot of time talking about things that I can't control. And I was spending a lot of emotional energy talking about things that I cannot control. And the way that I found that this is helpful to me is I get less bothered by things. Yeah, I still have my moments. I was just in a Costco gas line. And that right there, that's enough to try your patience. So I'm in this Costco gas line, and I'm trying to think of this because I just had this great, phenomenal experience at this unique festival called Stagecoach. And if you're a country music fan, let me know what you like, because I saw from old legends like Dwight Yoakam to the new guys like Morgan Wallen this week. And so I'd love to know who your favorite artists are. So type that in the chat wherever you're watching, either on YouTube or Facebook. Hi, Grizz. Good to see you. Because this is just really, I just find that we're in this interesting place as a country, and at least politically. So this weekend is, I guess, 4 or 5 years in the making. My wife started going to Stagecoach with some of our friends many years ago, and they made it an annual thing. And Amy's been trying to get me to go watch country music, but I'm like, I don't really like country music that much. So I never went. But this year I decided to go, in part because vacation days, because I don't have a traditional job, I don't count them as much. I'm not super specific about the days that I get off, which when you only have a certain amount, you got to space them out. So because that wasn't a factor, I decided this was going to be the year that I was going to go. And this is a pretty good way to do it, I will admit. This is some of my friends go to Coachella. So Stagecoach and Coachella are in the same place, Indio, California, about 3:45 from Phoenix, Arizona. And Coachella only does tents, and that sounds horrible. I've done a tent camping festival before, and it was fine, but not the most comfortable thing in the world, because you're staying up till 2 in the morning, because you're staying up listening to music, and you're awake by 6 because it's hot in your tent. Okay, so we understand that. This a little bit different. This is a group. We rent an RV, and we stay in an RV because at Stagecoach, they allow RVs. So that was pushing myself out of my comfort zone, number one. Now, it has been a long time since I've driven an RV. I first learned to drive an RV when I was a little baby radio station employee. My first job in Gainesville, Florida, WSKY, the sky. So we had this station RV, and they let me drive it. I think I was 22 years old at the time, but that's the only time I'd ever driven an RV, and I think I only drove it a handful of times, maybe twice even. So that was about 23 years ago. So I was a little nervous about driving an RV because I don't really drive big cars. I got a small Civic. My wife has a CRV. So we've got these little small compact cars. So this is pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, number one. Learning how to use the RV and then driving the RV. So what we did is we stayed at a campground overnight. And the guy that we rented the RV from came over and he showed us how to use it. And it was way less complicated than I thought. So I'm already thinking, okay, good. Off to a good start. I thought there's going to be crazy contraptions and things that you have to do. It's really self-explanatory. And it's a perfect example of how sometimes you build stuff up in your mind to be bigger than it actually is. And then when you actually go confront that big thing in your head, the thing that makes you nervous, you realize I don't have to be nervous. I can handle this. Because how many people do it every single weekend? They take their trailers, they hook them up, drive up wherever they're going to go, they camp, Sometimes you have access to the campground, so you can use the power, you can use the water. I know how to do that now. It's fantastic. So I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone, and I'm liking it every time I do because ultimately, when I push myself out of my comfort zone, my perspective broadens. And that's one of my favorite things to do is to try to look at things from a new perspective, to try to experience things in a different way, because that is ultimately what I now apply to politics, what I now apply to my worldview, if you will. Happy Monday, Dell. Good to see you in here. Coulter Wall, the suggestion from Grizz as far as the country artist. And again, if you do like country music, please let me know your favorite artists because after this weekend, definitely caught my ear. Definitely did. And there was some controversy too, which we'll talk about in a moment from Eric Church. A lot of people went to Stagecoach, did not like his set. I loved it. I'll explain in just a moment. But pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Driving that RV was like that too. But this is what I did. I just kind of got in the zone. I'm like, okay, you've driven one before. Get behind the wheel and drive it. Just like you would a car. Just know that it's, I don't know, 30 feet long, however long it is. And it's just about as wide as a traffic lane. So you don't have much room to maneuver. But stay focused and do it. And I drove it from the RV ground into where we ended up staying at Stagecoach, which is on the Polo Grounds in Indio. And it's kind of a cool setup because it's just RVs everywhere. There's multiple parking lots of RVs, and this is what people do at Stagecoach. Now, there's general admission, and you can drive in, and you can stay in houses or hotels, but a pretty good amount of people do the RV thing. And it's essentially 4 days of tailgating while listening to country music at night. That's why it's fantastic, but that's also out of my comfort zone. But as I'm driving this RV, pushing myself out of my comfort zone, it just gets easier and easier and easier because, again, I had built it up in my head to be a bigger deal than it was. So eventually get in and I park the RV and I back it up and I set it up and we and my brother plug it all in, get all the things going. And I'm like, man, this ain't so bad. So this was something I was avoiding doing for a long time, in part because of vacation time, but in part because it's not really my thing. I don't really know how to do it. But sometimes you forget that all you need is someone to show you how. And I'll give a shout out to Patrick. He's the guy we rented the RV from because he was very patient, very nice. He walked us through all the steps. And because of that, I felt more confident going in. And what I love about pushing myself in those moments is you find out what you can and cannot do. And it turns out you can do a lot more than you think you can, at least in my case. Not like driving an RV is a massive deal, but if it's never something you've never done before, it's kind of a massive deal. So I parked the RV, I'm in the camp, and now it's time to listen to some country music. Now, first off, day zero, as they call it, is Thursday. There is no music. It's just a party. It's just a bunch of people hanging out, having a good time. There's grills, there's bicycles, there's friendly people inviting you. Here's a beer, here's a beer, here's a beer. All kinds of good stuff. But let's get to Friday. Friday morning, before we even did country music, we decided that we would do a cold plunge because one of the vendors there was a cold plunge. It had cold plunges up behind their little tent setup. And this is something to definitely push you out of your comfort zone. And it's all the rage. There's all these guys online doing it, telling you to do it, and you should go in there. There's body benefits, and that's all fine. But this is another thing to test yourself to see if you can do it. Now, they advertised that the water was 38 degrees, at least on day one. We did it 2 times. The second day was a little bit warmer. You get in this tub, and it was not as bad as I thought that was going to be either. So here I am building this whole cold plunge up. And, if I try to do cold water in the shower, anybody else like this? If you are, let me know. Turn that water to cold. It's horrible. It is so uncomfortable. It's so gross. But for some reason in the tub, when you submerge yourself, it just didn't seem as bad to me. And pushing myself out of my comfort zone and learning and growing as I do it, because I understand that this is the most powerful tool that I have, my mind. And when my mind is chill and zen, I'm much more in control. So I'm in that tub and it's 38 degrees and it's like a big tub. So Mrs. Hunter is this way and I'm this way. And, the guys are counting down, the guys that do the cold plunge. And as long as you breathe, and as long as you just chill, it's not bad. I was very surprised. So did 3 minutes, could have done at least another minute, maybe even 2 minutes more. because that is it. Grizz even says it here in the chat. There's something about when you get out and you're cold, but you're just like feeling good because you just accomplished something. And that's the point of this entire section of this conversation is how you push yourself matters, because how you push yourself when you try new things, if you give yourself the patience to try those new things, you might just find something you love. You might just find a nice groove that you can get into, and you can expand your worldview by doing all these things. So, one of the other things to relate it to politics that I like to do is talk to the quote unquote other side, because I've got friends that don't vote the same way I do. I've got friends that view America much differently than I do. Just saw a poll out that says the rise in Gen Z and anti Americanism is up, way up. And we've talked about this before, if you caught us. There is an idea generation divide where many of us grew up in the idea that America is the greatest country ever. A lot of younger people have not. They've heard an opposite message to that. And that message has stuck. So much so that in relation to these protests, the anti Israeli protests, a lot of them are anti Semitic, but a lot of them are also anti America. Some people are waving Hamas flags. Hamas flags. Not just like, all right, I'm just going to wave the Canadian flag. No! Hamas flag, a terrorist organization for at least as long as I can remember. 20 plus years that I've been studying this stuff. It's all pointing towards a terrorist organization, and there are people supporting that. Like, that's what's really different. And again, it's louder, right? It's amplified because, number one, social media. And whatever's on social media, the traditional media decides they need to talk about, because the media is desperate for attention, to hang on to attention. And it's all part of this shifting landscape, which is why I think it is important for all of us to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, because ultimately, I realize this the older I get, in focusing on what I can control and what I can't. I can't control a presidential election. I can't control the tax rates. I can't control the school system, but I can control me, and I can control my response to that. And during the pandemic, this was really an important lesson, because there was tons of advice that came your way. There were tons of rules. I was just thinking about this actually, because here in Phoenix, if you don't live in Phoenix during rush hour, like in California, at least Southern California, they have a red and green light to allow you to go on the highway. Many of them are motion activated, but most people just sit there and wait until it turns green, because there's a certain cadence to it, but you can go through it. It's the oddest way to get onto a highway that I've ever seen in my life, but yet we have it. And I thought of the compliance and how we just kind of fall into line, which is okay. There's a certain decorum behind all of that. But beneath that, there is the ability to make your own decision, to do your own research, decide what's best for you based on what you think your tolerance level is, depending on the risk. For example, how fast do you drive a car? I usually go, especially on the highway, 8 to 10 over the speed limit. Just always have, probably always will. Because I want to get there fast. I like to drive fast, but not too fast. I don't want to get in trouble. So I try to find that nice little window. But other people don't drive that fast. Some people like to drive closer to the speed limit or at the speed limit. It used to annoy me, but I can't control what other people do behind the wheel, so I let that go. And I let that go by pushing myself in uncomfortable ways while I was sitting there in traffic getting mad at people because they don't drive the way I want them to drive. But then I really started to work on that and let go of that need to control other people in the car, which is why I can now go to a place like Stagecoach and go see music that I swore I never would like, to go see bands I never cared about, never wanted to see. But yet there I was. Because you find that there are some moments in life that just mean a ton to you. More than the music. Being there with your friends for 4 days. And for us, it was a group from LA, spearheaded by our friend Beata. And B, as we call her, is the Stagecoach OG. Her and Megan have been 9 times. Mrs. Hunter's been, I think this is her 5th. And there's a couple other newbies there. My brother came along, was a newbie, and we're having a great time because you get 4 days to hang out with people, which you very rarely get to do in the real world. But you get to do it here. You get to do it by choosing to do it, by getting outside of that comfort zone and saying, you know what? Now's the year. Let's go watch some country music. So the first act we saw, Dwight Yoakam. And I got to tell you, Dwight was fun. I don't know many. I think I knew one of his songs that I heard before. And I don't know how old he is, but he looks pretty good. He's got some moves. He dances, and you're like, all right. And it kind of hooks you in. So you again, just by approaching it with an open mind, because this is what I used to do when I'd go to see performances. An artist I liked or an artist I didn't. I just want to hear the songs that I know. Because that's natural for all of us, right? We want to vibe with our favorite bands. We want to see what's happening. We want to sing along. And Dwight Yoakam, I didn't know any of the songs. So I approached it just by saying, I'm here to see a country music legend perform. Don't know any of his songs, don't care. Let's just see how he performs. And because I went in with that open mind, I got to enjoy it. I wasn't looking for the song that I knew. I was just looking to enjoy myself. And I did. And up next is this guy named Jelly Roll. Have you guys heard of Jelly Roll? This guy's everywhere. So we were watching Dwight Yoakam, and it overlapped just by a few minutes with Jelly Roll. So we leave Dwight Yoakam. We go over to Jelly Roll. There's 2 different stages here at Stagecoach, the main stage and the Palomino stage. And it's, 5-7 minute walk. So we get in with Jelly Roll. And Grizz, Jelly Roll is bumping his old school rap music. Why? Because he's like, I got to appreciate where I came from. So he played Eazy-E. He did a couple of other verses from a couple of other songs. And I'm like, I thought this was a country show. Now, I know that Jelly Roll himself has a background as a rapper. In fact, my brother, he's like, have you heard Jelly Roll? I'm like, no. He's like, yes, you have. I showed you this video of this guy freestyling like 10 years ago. That was Jelly Roll. So I'm like, oh, interesting. But the fact that he's at a country concert and the fact that he's shouting out hip hop music, my favorite genre of music, I'm like, see, I'm glad I came here because something else I realized. A lot of new country is influenced by 90s music. Hip hop and rock, which we'll get to Hardy here in just a bit. He's a great artist. So as Jelly Roll's doing this, he's hooking me in, and he's just fun. Because he's got an interesting background. If you know anything about Jelly Roll, he's got some face tattoos, so you'd look at him, you're like, oh, he's a big dude. And he also went to jail. He went to jail in his past, but this is an exact perfect example of pushing yourself past your limits, your own self-limits sometimes. Because Jelly Roll could have just accepted the fact that he went to jail and that was his lot in life and he was never going to be amount more to that. Yet there he is, not quite headlining Stagecoach Night 1, but right before the headliner. And as Grizz says, yes, Jelly Roll never expected that voice out of him. I mean, there's just no way. And he was the MVP of Stagecoach, Jelly Roll. He appeared on stage with like 3 other people. We saw him every day. It was fantastic. And his attitude is just the best. He seems very appreciative and not missing the moment. He had his daughter come out on stage. Absolutely fantastic. And these are the things by not saying no. I know saying no is important. Sometimes you got to say no to things, but saying yes to things that might make you go, are the most rewarding because it can take your expectations and flip them on its head. Speaking of which, the headliner on Friday night, Eric Church. Do you guys know Eric Church? Do you like Eric Church? Hello, Lynn. Good to see you. Darlene, hello. Arrow, what's up, my man? Good to see you in here as well. Deanna, I see you. What's happening? Mike's off today. Those are just catching up. He usually is the one that is the grind horse. And you know me, I like to take all my days off. But here we are doing the reverse because Mike deserves a day off too. So Eric Church. So I know like a couple of songs from Eric Church that Mike has introduced me to. So I'm not a fan by any stretch of the imagination. And I only mean that not in a negative way. I just don't really know him. So in saying it that way, I didn't have any expectations of Eric Church's show going in. I don't know that songs that well, so I wasn't expecting anything. So again, I just listened with an open mind. And the internet went a little crazy and said that Eric Church is committing career suicide because he didn't sing enough of his songs. But see, what I caught that apparently no one else did is the artistry behind Eric Church's performance. Obviously, his last name is Church. The background, the facade was very church like. It was really cool to see. And he started off singing Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, a song I don't really like. It's very depressing, even though it says Hallelujah. So I don't normally like it. And he sang the whole song, Eric Church did, to start his show. And I'm thinking, where's he going with this? It's a very interesting way to do it. And then I caught the parallel, right? The church background, last name Church, Hallelujah, a church word. And that was one of the themes that Church pulled out throughout the entire show. He had a gospel background band group come out, chorus come out, whatever they're called. Choir, that's probably the word. And they backed him up on several different songs. And he let some of the artists in the choir have solos. But he did a ton of covers, not just church related. But the double meaning behind it seems to have been this. He sang Stand By Me and a few other cover songs. The way I interpreted what Eric Church did is how he became Eric Church, the music that he loves. And because I didn't have any expectations, because I was pushing myself out of my comfort zone, I wasn't disappointed like everybody else. And I kept thinking about it more and more and more. And Arrow, you're exactly right. Symbolism is powerful if you catch it, if you read between the lines. Because what I saw was Eric Church perform. He had an acoustic guitar. He sat on a stool. He had the choir behind him for most of the show. And he looked like he was having fun. And I love the way that he sang the songs and the way that he emphasized the words. And he just played music basically straight through for an hour and 15 minutes. So it may be disappointing to some who wanted to hear more Eric Church songs, which he did put 3 or 4 in them. But I wondered, I was thinking he might have put his 3 or 4 favorite songs that he wrote in there. One of them was Country Music Jesus, which I hadn't heard before. But it was really a great way to do it because he revolved it around his mistress of music. And he kept pulling that into the show. He would sing the hook. And I can't remember what the hook was off my head, but it was that whole idea that this is how important music is to Eric Church. It is like his church. Hence why he built the stage like his church. His last name is Church. And the church music was a big part of that. Because without church music, maybe you don't have certain other types of music. So that was so fascinating to me. And the internet got it completely wrong because they missed the artistry in it. And that's what I think getting back to this comfort level is all about, pushing yourself through it. Because I was not emotionally attached to an outcome. I didn't have an emotional expectation. I didn't have a favorite Eric Church song that I wanted him to sing. And when he didn't sing it, I was disappointed. And I learned this the hard way during the 2007 New England Patriots run. I know it's a sports analogy and this is not meant to be a sports conversation, but I was devastated, like so many other New England Patriots fans, when they didn't win the Super Bowl that year. They were undefeated in the regular season, made it all the way to the final game, and they lost. And I realized something a couple of years after that, how much emotional investment I put into something I could not control the outcome of. And I learned that that is a great way to push myself, to try to detach expectations and outcomes that I can't control. Even saying like, oh, I'm going to get a raise at work. Well, you can't really control that. Now, you can control the things that might lead you to get a raise, but getting attached to that outcome. And I've done that many times in my life where you didn't get what you thought you were going to get. And it hurts, right? It's devastating. It's exactly what so many people at Stagecoach experienced with Eric Church, apparently except me. The only one in the Earl group that loved the performance. The only one that I saw say positive things about it from an artistry standpoint. And again, this is all because of pushing myself out of my comfort zone by even going to a country music show. 4 days of it, 3 days of music. And Dell, you're exactly right. Church music made by the Shop Brewing Company here in Tempe. Ooh, if you like IPAs, that's a good beer. That's one of the top 5, I think, IPAs in the state for sure. So pushing myself out of the comfort zone. How about this? Nickelback. It's another one the internet hates, but Nickelback performed a late night set. It was pretty good. I ain't gonna lie to you. I don't love all Nickelback music, but I love this performance. And this is what I love about Stagecoach, too, because it wasn't just about country music, right? Nickelback was there. On day 2, there's an artist named Leon Bridges. And Leon Bridges, if you've never heard Leon Bridges, put him on because he's got like a classic style. So he'll sing a song that sounds like it's from the 60s, but he's a modern artist. He's probably 30-something. Fantastic. He did great on night 2. You know who stole the show, I think? Post Malone. You guys know Post Malone? He's kind of a rapper. He's kind of a singer. He did a special country cover set and killed it. It was awesome. He had a big grin on his face. He had people come out and sing with him. He looked like he was having the time of his life. And that made it so much better. And Post Malone can sing. And he can sing country. Absolutely fantastic. And I wouldn't have expected that because, again, there's a couple Post Malone songs, Posty as the kids call them, that I like, but not enough of a fan where I'm devoting hours a day listening to Post Malone. But watching him perform, again, without expectations, not in my comfort zone, expands my comfort zone to now like more things. And here's the other thing I want to point out, too. Miranda Lambert was good. Diplo is a DJ they have every year. He does a post-show party, and it's a party. It's fun. I'll get to day 3 in a moment. But yeah, the Miranda Lambert was pretty good. But I think Post Malone stole the show. I just do. I'm impressed because Stagecoach is that example of expanding beyond just country music or bringing artists in to represent the broader genres of music to allow us to expand our minds more. You know, I remember being a kid, right? And I being a kid when I was a young baby radio talk show host, and I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew all the ways. I'm a libertarian-leaning, fiscal conservative, about as fiscally conservative as you get, because I know that that's the only issue that ultimately matters. I know immigration does, and I know economy does, but 3 to 5 years, we're going to be in hurting if we don't do anything about it. So this is really why I want to push ourselves to start thinking differently, not just about our music choices or about our decisions about where we go or to drive an RV or to not. And if you missed it, I drove an RV for the first time in 23 years. And by doing that, it opens up my mind to what else is possible. And seeing artists perform like Eric Church, who throws a curveball, makes you wonder what you can do. And that's what I take away from this weekend. To go back to politics, I'm not really thinking about 2024, honestly. I'm thinking about 2028. I'm thinking about 2032, 2036 now, because the long-term plan is more important. The long-term problems are more important. And that's why we have to push ourselves out of our comfort zones, because our comfort zone is that groove, right? It's that song you've heard a million times, and you're like, this is a great song. I'm going to listen to it forever. You still can't listen to it forever, but you can also find another groove that's different. Like my grooves have always been hip-hop and R&B. If you could sum up the amount of time, let's say 100% of the time I've listened to music, let's say it's, I don't know, it's a million hours probably. 70 to 80% of it probably is hip-hop and R&B. But now it's expanding. And now what's great about this is that the hip-hop and R&B that I've listened to over and over and over and over again, now I have new stuff that I can add into my repertoire because I broadened my perspective, because I saw performers perform that I never thought I would care to like, never even wanted to see. So when it comes to politics, that's that same thing. So you have that groove, right? The old habits. Maybe it's our old radio station that Mike and I used to work at that you love to listen to. That's a groove. But you get that same thing every day, every day, every day, every day. But what that is not, it's not a groove of solutions. It's a groove of complaint. And that's fine. There's a place for it. We all do it. I was just complaining about the Costco gas line. So I'm not trying to be above complaining. But there's a certain groove to it that you can go back to anytime and it sounds the same and it sounds good. But when you push yourself and you expand and you drive that RV and you go to the country music show, you start thinking about things differently. You start getting a different perspective when you talk to your progressive neighbor or maybe your independent voting neighbor and you hear them out about what they have to say about politics. We had a couple political discussions while we were there. And this is the sentiment I get. And again, I have a very limited bubble that I live in, like all of us do. And in that bubble, I try to push out as far as I can to get reads on how people are viewing politics. And the consensus and the people that I talked to this weekend, friends and beyond friends, is abortion's going to be a big deal for Republicans. If they don't get it right in states like Arizona, where there will be a ballot initiative, it's going to draw people out. And this is all by design, by the way. And this is what we mean by pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, because what I've been able to do in the 23 years that I do it is I've zoomed up here and I look at politics as chess, right? Or like Google Earth. And I look at the strategy and I understand how they're trying to manipulate you because they want you to stay in that groove. They want you to listen to the same song over and over again and not pay attention to how incompetent they are. So that being said, that abortion issue is going to be a big deal in states like Arizona because it will be on the ballot. And I know that the lawmakers have repealed that 1864 law that went into effect because there was no other law to block it. So they're taking care of that. But it's still driving people to the polls. And it's still the branding of the Republican Party is affected by that. Because these are the people that I was talking to primarily are the people you want to vote for you. For example, moms in their 40s, college degrees, some of them don't, but smart and successful. It's a big issue for them, whether we want it to be or not, whether we want to be right or wrong. And this is another great thing. It's being right all the time doesn't matter if you can't win because you can't implement your policies. And the Democrats are very smart about using things as strategy, things like abortion, finding the weak spot and exposing that weak spot and hammering it over and over and over and over and over again. Because that's what politics is about. Again, it's not about right and wrong. It's about money and who gets to spend your money that they take from you. That's that pushing ourselves out of the comfort zone to have these different conversations and sharing these conversations. Because in that consensus, and this is true almost everywhere that I go, there are people very concerned about the future of America, especially these moms, right? Because they have kids, young kids, mostly under 10. So they want to make sure that their kids are getting a country that affords them the opportunities that we all have. And with the growing sentiment that America is not that place, this is where we have to do the long-term strategizing. Because that next generation of kids is not going to like the generation that's ahead of them. This generation doesn't like America. So there's prime opportunities here to start teaching kids the value of America, the value of pushing yourselves out of your comfort zone. And that's what Mike and I try to do, me in particular. Maybe I don't always do it the most artful way, but that's all part of it. It's all part of pushing ourselves to get out of that groove, to not only listen to hip hop music, but still listen to hip hop music and add other things to it, like Morgan Wallen. This guy's been all the rage, Morgan Wallen. He was the headliner the last night. And I now completely understand why people like Morgan Wallen. I missed it before. Yeah, I'm doing some David Goggins in here, Arrow. I'm not yelling at you crazy like David Goggins. I'm going to go run and do all those crazy things. But it is that exact same method, that mantra of get out of your groove sometimes. You can always go back to the groove, but get out sometimes. And our current American political groove is just that. It's being and moaning about the other side and how the other side's wrong 100% of the time, or they're devil worshipers, or want to kill babies, or, whatever labels get put upon us and whatever labels we put upon the other side. But what's not changing is anything, right? Because it's that groove. Because the money flows in politics. While you're in that groove, the money is moving around, the power is moving around, they're shifting everything around. They're distracting you from the real issues. Did you know the United States government classifies about 50% of their documents, just over 50%? So 50% of the paperwork generated by the United States government, which is millions and millions and millions and millions of pages every single year, is classified so that you cannot see it. It's not because they're hiding secrets from you. They're hiding their incompetence from you. They're hiding their horrible decision making and the fact that they spend $90,000 on toilet seats. I don't want you to know that. So this is why they distract us. They want us to go back into those grooves so we don't actually see what's going on. I have several books here, and I got rid of a ton right next to me, all about all these things that they don't want you to know. If I could reach it, here we go. This book will knock your socks off. Mugged by the State. There's a story in here, and this is really what influenced a lot of my thinking back in the day, because this is the real outside of the groove stuff, outside of that main media that wants you in that groove. This is a book that details how states and cities, governments have abused their authority. One example I'll give you from the book. Older lady bought a used car from a used car lot. She was happy. Like, I got a good deal on this thing. And it was like a big car. It was like a Crown Vic or something like that. She's driving down the road one day, old lady style, gets pulled over by a cop. Cop gets out the car, goes up and says, "Ma'am, do you mind if I have my drug dog search your car?" She's like, "I don't mind. I'm a grandma, not doing drugs." So the dog starts doing his thing. Might be her thing. I don't know. And catches a scent of something in the trunk. So the police officer opens the trunk, and lo and behold, there's a hidden compartment in there. So the cop's like, "Oh, that's what the dog was alerted to, this hidden compartment." The cop finds the hidden compartment, nothing in it. But they took her car because it had the residue of it. It smelled like the drug. So they impounded her car. Asset forfeiture. That's the real story. That I think if we got out of our comfort zone, if we went to the stagecoach of politics, if you will, we would understand how power works. And this is what I said too, because I think I read this book literally 20 years ago. I'm going to see when it came out. Because once I read this book, it came out in 2003. So I read it that year. I understood that the game is not the game that's played in public. The game of power is played behind the scenes, small stories that indicate a pattern. And, if you've listened to me for a long time, and I very much appreciate it. If you have, thank you very much. Some of you like Arrow and Grizz and Deanna, Jim, what's happening, Darlene. I knew what was going to happen to Donald Trump before I knew it was going to happen to Donald Trump. Now, again, I think some of Trump's decision-making is responsible for his troubles. But this book and so many others that I've read point out how much power the government has to use against anyone. I have another book here somewhere. I think it's out in my kitchen, actually, my sitting room, called 3 Felonies a Day. I've talked about it a lot. Essentially, the theory is that all of us commit 3 felonies a day because laws are written so vaguely that they could be interpreted many different ways. And that means all of us could get arrested at any point. But see, that's what happens when we're in a groove. We don't notice things like that because we're just playing the same record over and over and over again. And we're only hearing one tune, right? So like me going to Stagecoach, I'm hearing different inputs. I'm like, wow, what is this stuff? This actually is really awesome. Eric Church, man, I love that guy. I would love to see that guy perform again. Even though I don't know any of his music, I may not go back and listen to any of his music, but I 100% would go see him perform again because I got outside of my groove. And every time I get outside of my groove, my life gets better. It lets expanded. And I feel like there's better solutions when we actually talk about the real issues and the real issues of power and what we can do to rein those power laws in, those vague laws. For example, the 1864 law right here in the state of Arizona The 1864 law that banned abortions before Arizona was a state. It was in the middle of the Civil War, for crying out loud. The fact that that law is still on the books, the fact that we don't have audits on old laws that are over 50 years, do they apply or not? And if not, we should repeal them because they call them lawmakers, not law repealers. So every time a law is made, you lose a little something. But we never go back and check. And you remember this old one? This is a groove one. This is what they want you to think. It is your responsibility to understand all of the laws in this society. It's impossible. All that has done is made an industry of lawyers. And I saw a headline today that Hunter Biden is suing Fox News. This after the defamation case by Dominion lawsuit or Dominion Systems, in which they had to pay what? Fox had to pay him $800 million or something like that. This is all where this comes into play here. The whole system is backwards and upside down, designed around money. So they want us to believe that if we get into this groove and we fight with each other, no one's going to notice what they're actually doing. No one's going to notice that half of the documents are classified. No one's going to notice that cops are, in some cases, seizing old ladies' cars because someone else used it to deal drugs. And then that woman has to fight to get it back and spend thousands of dollars on her own lawyers to fight it. So she buys this car, call it $12,000, probably spends $25,000 on lawyers to get the car back. Some people just don't even do it because it's not worth it. Another guy in this book, mugged by the state, he restored and sold antique cars. And one guy bought two of them from him, paid in cash. And the cop pulled him over, had the cash. Cop took the cash. No evidence, drug dealing, just a bunch of cash. Because you can't carry more than $10,000 in cash on you. It's against the law. Cops can take it. That's wild. Completely un-American, but it's been allowed. See, while we're in this groove and we're fighting these things, we don't notice those things. And little things become big things. And then big things become gigantic things. And this is what I understand about life now at almost the age of 46. If you have a difficult decision, something that you have to take care of, the longer you wait, the worse it gets. For example, I don't know why I'm pulling this one out, but if you've ever been in a relationship too long, I'm not saying I have, but I mean, back in the day I have. Yeah, I'll use an example. So I dated this girl in college for a long time. It was not a good relationship for either one of us, but we just kept hanging in there way too long. So then when it was time to actually break up, it was horribly difficult because we didn't just do it when we wanted to do it. Wanted to fight through it instead. Same thing here. Question becomes what to do about it. Pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. We need more people to be able to do that, to get out of that groove, to stop falling for the same tactics and tricks by the politicians because ultimately all they want is to get reelected. So pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones and maybe sharing this, we're welcoming people in Mondays and Fridays when we broadcast live right here for you on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. Mike Russell's off today. My name is Rob Hunter. Thank you for being here with us. Is to start trying to find that groove where we can still go back. I like all these guys that work at these radio stations. They're all friends of mine. I've worked with them all. I got no ill will for them. I want them to succeed. I want everybody to succeed. But that doesn't mean that we can't have different conversations and should have different conversations. And that's why I use this weekend for myself as that example, is pushing myself beyond my comfort expands my comfort. Going in the cold plunge tub, 38 degrees. Not something you get excited to do. Like, yeah. But after I did it, I'm like, that's not so bad. I'll do it again. And on the way home, we were talking about getting our own cold plunge. And then we found out they were $3,500 basically. And we're like, might need to budget for that one down the line sometime. But it's all about doing that. I'm doing it in the gym too. I've never lifted weights before. But I like lifting weights now. It's something new. It's something challenging. And because of that, it expands my mind and it expands my capabilities and what I'm capable of. And I think that you, like me, we're all capable of so much more than we think, especially if we can get outside of our groove. So I have a challenge for you. Let's do something this week. I'll do something too. Let's think of something that's hard to do that we've always wanted to do, that we can push ourselves out of our comfort zone a little bit this week. Anybody up for it? Let me know. Let me know what you're going to come up with. And yes, Darlene, Daryl is, I was texting him a month ago, 2 months ago, and we don't call each other very often, but there's a connection there with Daryl Ancarlo. And for those of you who don't know, Daryl Ancarlo was the first host that I worked for when I moved to Phoenix in 2007. I was in New Mexico. I was there because after Hurricane Katrina, I had trouble finding a job. I ended up at a small station in Farmington, and I'm incredibly grateful for that experience. That was another thing I had to reimagine in my own head, because that was not a high point in my life. And I had this job that I really loved in a city that I really loved. We were making noise, and then Katrina happens, and I end up chilling up there for a little while, and it just, my head wasn't in the right space. So I got in touch with this guy here in Phoenix. Russ was his name, was running the radio station that I ended up going to work for. And at first I tried out for Daryl's job, the job that eventually went to Daryl, rightfully so. Daryl, insanely good at what he does. Great storyteller, great visionary. I learned so much from him. But that was the third job I applied for. It's a funny thing about perseverance. One thing about me is I never give up. I'm like, all right, you got to move to Farmington. You got to move to Farmington. Got to apply for 3 jobs at the same radio station. Okay. One of these jobs they'll hire me for. So I tried for the talk show, didn't get it. Second one was to work in the news department. Didn't get that. And then I got an email from Russ. He says, might have the job for you. Would you consider producing our new show? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Turns out it was Daryl. So they flew me down from Farmington to Phoenix, and I met Daryl for a day, 3-4 hours. It was a wild interview. We didn't do it like in a sitting setting. We went to stores. He walked me around Fry's electronics store. I know you guys have probably been to a Fry's electronics store if you've been in the Valley a long time. No longer. I don't know. Maybe the one down on Mill. Is it not Mill? It's Baseline. I don't know if that one's still open, but there was one up here by me that's been closed for a long time. And he was like throwing stuff out the aisle, hoping I would catch it. Just seeing if I could roll with him. Because Daryl is unlike anyone I've ever worked with in this business, and taught me a ton, right? About pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Another perfect example of that. One of the first things that we did in 2007, in May of that year, I moved here in January in Phoenix. We went to the border. That was first time any talk show had ever done that. We went into Mexico. We talked to coyotes. Couldn't do it now. We'd get killed. But back then, it wasn't run by the drug cartels. We did crazy stuff. We covered 2 with Daryl, presidential elections. We went to Iowa in 2007 to cover elections up close and personal. Never heard of a radio station doing this, but watching Daryl with a microphone, just magic. The way he interacts with people, just magic. Way out of my comfort zone. I like sitting behind this microphone. It's comfy. It's groove, right? Getting back to that groove. So I guess that is the theme, right? Is really, I mean, I don't know if I look at it as a mission to right the ship that this country, the direction that it's going, because I just really feel that we're off kilter. I feel that we don't have a commander that's leading the country, that's uplifting people, that's bringing people together, because I do think that these solutions require us to work with both sides, all sides. I just don't even want to talk about sides anymore, because I don't find it to be effective. I find it to be more harmful than not. Because all these problems are going to affect all of us one way or the other, especially if we don't do anything about it, especially if we just keep avoiding it. Like I avoided Stagecoach for 4 years. And then I'm gone. I'm like, why did I avoid that for 4 years? Because I'm hooked. And again, it's not even just about the music, but there is something about being able to stand there with people, not know their names, not know where they come from, not know what they're thinking about. But none of that matters because you're there sharing this moment together. There's an artist named Hardy that I'd heard of in passing, but I didn't really know any of his music. He performed before Morgan Wallen on Sunday night. And he's influenced by 90s rock and a little bit of hip hop. But what stood out to me about Hardy is he took a moment and a song to really dedicate it to America. So before he starts the song, and I don't know the name of the song, so I apologize again. The artist's name is Hardy. He asked what the first responders were, cops and firefighters, military, and then he brings out this American flag. He put it around his back. And I know that's not necessarily the most appropriate thing to do, but Hacksaw Jim Duggan did it back in the WWE days, so it's totally fine. But he had that American flag on, and people in the crowd just loved it. It's the exact opposite of this poll that I told you about. I wonder if I can share this here. I'll present. All right, let's try this and see if we can show you this. Here we go, right here. Look at this. All right, so you guys can see that, and I'll see if I can scroll here. I guess I can't really scroll, but there's that part right there. I'll read it to you. And I think that this is really what's driving me today is this poll numbers and being able to push myself out of my own comfort zone. So identifying yourself as an American is still very important to conservatives. Not so much liberals. And the younger you get, Gen Z we're talking about, I think Gen Z, under 30, right? Liberal conservative gap amongst those under 30 was 55 points, with only 18% of young liberals saying that being American is important to their identity. That's difficult. That's what we're up against here. That right there, which you see on your screen, that is not an easy to overcome challenge. It's going to require us to get out of our groove. It's going to require us to think differently. It's going to require us to push ourselves and be patient with people and ask questions. Because after all of you in here love this country just like I do. This country for me means the world because I was allowed to had the freedom to do what I wanted to do. And it's this with my big brother, Mike Russell, who I've known now for 17 years. And Mike's a guy that likes his comfort zone just like I do. But what's great about working with Mike is we can push ourselves outside of those comfort zones. And Mike and I can talk to you guys about this too. How Mike influenced me on guns. Patient. Said I can go shoot with him anytime I want. Want to go hunt? Let's go hunt. And I did that because, again, I pushed myself out of that comfort zone. My last name is Hunter, after all. And it was something weird when you go do something like that. So we went up to a hunting ranch in Woodruff, Arizona. Blue Rooster Hunting Ranch. Check it out if you want to go hunting. Because for a new guy like me, man, I ain't trying to go in the woods for 6 days and look for an elk. Because it turns out you don't always get to see an elk. There's not elk just running around. When I went up with Mike first time on an elk hunt, I didn't have a tag. He did. I'm like, oh, this is going to be easy. He's going to open the tent in the morning. There's going to be 6 elk. They're going to take our elk. Then we're just going to hang out for 4 days. Nope. We hiked in the woods for miles and miles and miles. Didn't even see an elk. I'm like, it's got to be a better way. There is a better way. Especially if it's the first time and you want to do it. Want to feel what it's like. And I don't know if I love it. I don't know if I'll do it again. But I'm not opposed to it. There was something strange that happened to me when I did it. When I harvested the animal, basically when I shot it. It was a wild boar. It was just something ancestral about that because for the longest time, that's how we ate. We didn't go to grocery stores. Had to find your food and eat it. So there's something ancestral about pushing myself out of my comfort zone there. And I think that's where all of this is coming from. About 5, 6, 7 years ago, I decided that the only way for me to grow was to push myself out of my comfort zone. And I don't do it as much as I should, but I try to do it as often as I can, at least when I'm conscious of it, which brings me back to this weekend. So that's what I'm going to continue to do. And I'm going to continue to do it here, and we're going to push ourselves. And I'm going to do it in the most honest way possible, but to challenge ourselves because the principle that matters most to me is the principle of freedom. I don't care which party, which side. I don't want anyone to be able to take away your freedoms. I mean, that's just it. So what are you guys up to? Let's take a few minutes. Let's chat. Let me know what you're happening. Let me know what's on your mind. Let me know what you're thinking about. If you have questions, now's a great time to ask them. I do want to maybe open these end of our shows up to Q&As with you guys since you're here watching with us. Grizz, thanks for the update on Fry's down on Baseline. It's gone. Man, special place where I got my talk radio producer job with Daryl and Carlo, that Fry's location. No longer there. And yes, Hacksaw, man, those are the great days of WWE. They were always fantastic. I don't watch much now, but I now have a lot of friends that do. I've seen a couple WrestleManias here or there, and it is fun. It's an entertaining show. Those guys are very, very athletic. Yeah, Lynn, I hear you, especially if you have a sensory problem. Crowds yelling, screaming makes you nervous for sure. Great news about Stagecoach, and I assume Coachella is you can be far away from the crowds and still hear the music pretty well. You can't see great, but they also have monitors for you. And, it's okay. It's not quite the same experience, but I definitely get that. There was one point during Nickelback. So I got claustrophobic and it was weird the way that the crowd was. So the Palomar, what's it called again? Palomino stage. So it's underneath like a tent. It's not fully closed in, but it's tented. It's kind of bizarre how it's set up. So there were people all in the tent and they were overflowing out the side of the tent. And they put this new monitor that would be stage right, house left of the stage. And there were people convening around there, but there was overflow from the tent, the stage section that were meeting there, and the people moving all around like a whirlpool. Freaked me out. Had to get out of there. Not safe. Absolutely not safe. But you adjust, Lynn, right? I know you have some other, challenges that you have as well. So I totally get that. Oh, that's a good one, Lynn. That's a great question. What about Christy Noem? Okay, this is just weird. Why would you do that? Admit that. What we're talking about here is Christy Noem talked about shooting her dog in the backyard or whatever it was. And I understand that people do that, right? Especially people in South Dakota, maybe. Instead of going to the vet, putting the dog down, this is the old school way. Like you shoot your horse when your horse is down, right? It's a horrible, hard thing that you got to do. But why invite that criticism? Nobody needs to know that. You could have kept that one to yourself. Unless they were hot on the trail. Someone had dug it up and said, oh, Christy Noem cannot be Donald Trump's vice president because she shot her dog. Darlene, that's a great question. Apparently, that's all the rage. I haven't sourced it. I haven't called her up. I haven't said, hey. But then let me ask you guys, does it matter to you? Curious. Because I mean, I look at pasts differently than I used to. Because we all make mistakes. And I think one of the flaws that we have, again, this is a groove in our political system. One of the flaws is we judge people based on their pasts. We expect them to be perfect, but they're not perfect. They're never going to be perfect. They're regular people just like you and me. And this is one of the biggest realizations that I had. And I remember at first, when I first got in this business, political talk radio, and I met these politicians, I was like, oh my goodness, talking to these politicians, this is cool. But as I got to know them and talk to more of them, I realized they're no different than you and me. They're regular people. They sleep in a bed. They get up. They do the same things in the bathroom that you do. They walk the same way you do most of the time. But we put them up here. Same thing we do with celebrities, right? And it was just funny. While we were there, one of the Jenners walked by. So I don't even remember which show I was at. I think it was Post Malone. So I'm standing there with my wife and my brother's there. And I don't think it was just the three of us. And these big, huge security guys come through. And they kind of, so Amy and I are standing like this. And they kind of split us like this. Push us through because important people had to come through. But that's how we treat people, right? That's that groove that they want. They want that status that they love. But I just don't buy it anymore because I talk to enough of them. I mean, certain ones I have reverence for. Congressman David Schweikert I like. He showed me more and taught me more about Washington than any other politician ever has, any book ever has. John McCain I like. He's always very nice to me. Got a little spar with him in the Ancarlo days back in 2007, though. It was pretty fun. And Carlo asked him about the border, and McCain got mad and walked away. Classic Ancarlo and classic John McCain. But I like John McCain. I got to, thanks to Mike Broomhead, got to hang out with McCain in his office for about an hour one day. That was pretty cool. He showed us around, telling us stories. It was all kinds of great stuff. But that's that bottom line. The bottom line is push ourselves. And Jim, thanks for that update. Watching on X because the Facebook pause feeds and skips. If anybody else is having that problem on Facebook, let me know. See what we can do to remedy that. Sometimes the technology on our side is a little limited, but we'll see what we can do. Because we want to have it everywhere. We want to be able to accessible for you guys, to make it easy, right? Easy to share, easy to talk about, easy to get a hold of us. Because that's what ultimately we want, right? We want this to be a nice big community. And Mike and I are still considering what to do for a Russell and Hunter event. So we'll have some ideas for you guys coming up soon. And I do want to ask this question too. 5 o'clock Fridays versus noon. I would love your preference on that. Can't guarantee that we're going to move it to 5 because Mike and I got to finagle our schedules. But just out of curiosity, because we had that one day we had the technological glitch and the show didn't play till 5. But it seemed to work out pretty well. So whatever you guys are thinking, let us know. But I want you to push yourselves out of your comfort zone, just like I did this past weekend. Maybe it's country music. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's reading Mugged by the State. Maybe it's, I don't know. Like Deanna, I know. Maybe it's something in your yard that you can do. All right, so we got Grizz at noon. We got Deanna and Ronnie, I think, indicating 5 o'clock. Okay, good. That's a good way to start. And if you guys have questions and what, if there's things that you want to hear about, definitely reach out to us. So let's go back to this Kristi Noem thing for just a second. Number one, she's going to be, at best, vice president. Does it bother me that she made that decision? I don't know, man. I wouldn't make that decision. But I know that life is different for different people. So I try to be more understanding and less judgmental about other people's decisions, especially given some of the decisions that I've made. Not really in a position to be judging others. I'm busy judging myself. David, I appreciate that. Oh, Diamondbacks games Fridays. All right. Darlene, are you a season ticket holder? I haven't been to a Diamondbacks game in, I don't know, four long years. Maybe this year. Maybe this year will be the time. I don't get access to the tickets anymore, though. I used to get, it was one of the perks of media. You could get tickets. Although maybe I can pull some strings. We'll see. So going back to Kristi Noem, just to wrap that up, I'm going to think more about it because when I was in my bubble this weekend, I just wasn't really worried about it. I just was focused on being with my homies, learning some new things, hearing some new music, and expanding myself. And this is ultimately what I want to wrap up on. So over the years that I've done, and I've read books like this, Mugged by the State, again, Randall Fitzgerald. If you want to know about government power, check this book out. You can go out on eBay. It's like probably $10, $13. But the reason I put all these things together in a pattern is trying to point the ship in the right direction. Maybe I can play a small part in it. Maybe I can't. But I know that I'm in control of me, ultimately. And I get to control my experience. And sometimes it's great to just shut it down for 4 days, go listen to country music, push yourself in that way, and just enjoy. Just enjoy listening to Post Malone sing country songs. Just enjoy jamming out with Diplo. Just enjoy life. Because ultimately, that's all we got. President matters. The economy matters. Of course they matter. But so does your life and what you do with it. Darlene, thanks for checking. Mugged by the State, new, $26 on Amazon, but you can get it used for $7. I bought mine, I think, on eBay. Because I had an original copy and, I don't know, somewhere in the moves, I left it behind, lost it, rented it out to somebody, but I needed it for reference. And maybe that's a good point. Deanna brings this up. I actually met Deanna way back in 2007 at a Diamondbacks game. What was it called? It was called the Giancarlo Posse, wasn't it, Deanna? This is basically what we tried to do, what we're doing right now. Try to get as many different people together from all these different backgrounds and see what happened. Now, unfortunately, Daryl got in a car accident not too long thereafter, and we didn't get to see the Giancarlo Posse fulfill its full potential. So maybe we can bring that back, the Russell and Hunter Posse. I don't know if we can use the word posse anymore. But yeah, I remember Deanna there. I remember there was an engineer that worked at Honeywell. Can't remember her name. She was pretty awesome. It was really fun. And I think that there collectively is where a lot of these solutions will come from, because that is where the big solutions come from. So in my relationships with Mrs. H, with my mom, with my dad, with my brother, my friends, always find that it's not about the disagreements. It's about finding where the agreements are and where you can move forward. It always ends up mattering. And if you do that in your personal relationships, we should do that in our political relationships too. It should always be about moving things forward for a better tomorrow. But if we're in our groove, it's harder to do that. So on that note, because Mike's not here, I'm going to let you all go. I'm going to go myself. I just got back from Stagecoach, so I got to go stretch. I got to go do some stuff, put some stuff away. But I like it. Let's plan a big meeting. Maybe a Diamondbacks game. Maybe we can figure something out there, because that would be fun. Definitely would be fun. Let's see. Oh, yeah, Darlene, you were there. How about that? See, it was a great group. All right, I like it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to work on that over the next few weeks, have some ideas, and you guys share your ideas with us. We have an email address, russellhunteraz@gmail.com, or you can just find us on social and just message us. Honestly, it's easier to message me directly on my Facebook page or Instagram, Rob Hunter Media, and I just see it. It's just a little bit easier for me to see. So if you want to reach out, please reach out anytime. Ronnie, thank you. Deanna, thank you. Grizz, appreciate you being here. Darlene, everybody. Jim, appreciate you guys chiming in. Mike and I'll be back on Friday at noon, and keep us up to date. And don't forget, what are you going to do to push yourself this week? Get out of your comfort zone. Do something new. Try something. You just might like it. So until next time, my name is Rob Hunter. Have a fantastic night. Cheers. Oh, and don't forget to tell your friends about Russell and Hunter's The Brewmans.